Hi 703, it's Miss English. Welcome back. Our break is over and it's time to review our Unit 4 exam. You'll have a sheet you need to fill out today, basically going through each one of the problems that you missed, making the corrections, and hopefully analyzing why you missed what you missed. So hopefully I can get this done in 15 minutes. Otherwise, let's get started. Question number 1. There's an attachment if you can't read this very well, but the attachment is actually the exam itself. Which expression is equivalent to the expression -3 times the quantity 4x minus 2 minus 2x? So all I really need to do here is number 1, distribute. So distribute. When I distribute, I take the -3 and I distribute it or multiply it to each one of the elements. So I have -3 times 4x. In this case, I'm adding a -3 times -2. You'll see what happens. But you always know you're adding something, and then you worry about the signs in a minute. So I have -3x times 4x is -12x, so -12x. Then I have -3 times -2 is +6, and then I have the -2x there at the end. I have some like terms here. I have a -12x and a -2x. If I add two negatives together, -12 and -2, my final answer is -14x, and then I have this 6, which is just left over. This is my final answer. It is answer choice D. Question number 2. We worked on this in class, but this seemed to be very challenging. So first thing when I'm given a word problem is I turn it into a math sentence. A number n is multiplied by -5/8. The product, that means when I multiply them together, the answer is -0.04. So I make my math statement by saying n times -5/8 is equal to -0.4. So that's just my math sentence. Now, there's a lot of different ways that I could go about solving what I want to find is n. But the way that I chose to do it is to try to get rid of my fraction here. So in order to get rid of this 8, I'm going to multiply both sides by 8. In this case, 8 over 1. But if I do that to one side, I have to do the same thing to the other side. So I'm multiplying 8 times -5/8 n, and that's equal to 0.4 times 8 over 1. The reason I did this, you can see my 8's nicely cancel, and so I'm left with -5n, and if I multiply 0.4 times 8, I'll get 3.2. For the time being, you can work with decimals, and then we know that our answer choice is going to be a fraction, so we'll have to move it back to fractions in a minute. But if you take -5n equals don't forget that negative sign, 3.2. Now I'm going to divide both sides by -5. So I'm dividing this side by -5. And I'll see if I multiply 3.2 is the same thing as 32 over 10. So now if I want to go back to just being consistent with fractions, I have 32 divided by 10 times 1 over 5. Because remember, I multiplied both sides by 1 over 5. So if I multiply those two things together, a negative times a negative is a positive. I'm left with 32 over 50, and I can reduce that down to 16 over 25, and that is my final answer, answer choice D. This one is really messy, but it's not too hard if you just stick with it. It just takes an awful lot of work. So all you really need to do, and it says which expression is equivalent to the expression below. So I know that I have a -1/2 on the outside. I have to distribute it to each element and then to combine like terms. So when I distribute it, it looks something like this. -1/2 times -3/2, -1/2 times 6x negative 1/2 times 1 minus 3x. So the distributing looks something like this. And basically you then just have to painfully multiply these things through. 1/2 times 3/2, 1 times 3 is 3, 2 times 2 is 4, a negative times a negative is now a positive. 1 times 6 is 6, 2 times 1 is 2. There's just one negative here, so this stays negative. And then negative 1/2 times 1 is just negative 1/2. And then that 3x just stays on the outside. I can't get rid of it yet. So I'm left with 3x over 4 minus 6x over 2. And what did I have here? Yes, this was a negative 1/2. Oh, those combined. So that's a negative 1/2 minus 3x. Now I can see that 6 divided by 2 is just 3, so I can simplify that. And I have 3/4 x minus 3x minus 1/2 minus 3x. So this is a like term and this is a like term. Negative 3x minus 3x is negative 6x. I have a positive 3/4 x, so I'm adding plus 3/4 x. And then this 1/2 just comes straight down. It's not a like term. I can't do anything with it. Negative 6x plus 3/4. Just think of that as saying, what would I have to add to 3/4 to get negative 6x? It's negative 5 and 1/4 x minus 1/2. And that is my final answer. Answer choice D. Moving along, this was our famous pentagon problem. Remember, a pentagon has 5 sides, and it tells me that the perimeter, that means if I add all these sides up, the perimeter is going to be equal to 10.5. So I set up my statement right here. So there's just one side that is 1.7. The rest of the sides, h plus h plus h plus h plus 1.7 equals 10.5. So if I have 4 h's and one 1.7, if I add them all up, I get 10.5. Now I just have a simple algebra problem to solve. I combine like terms by subtracting 1.7 from both sides, and I'm left with 4h equals 8.8. To get rid of that 4, I divide by 4, divide this side by 4, and h equals 2.2. Answer choice A. Which expression, we're on number 5, which expression represents the product? Product means to multiply of 3 and some number, quantity 5/4 n plus 1/8. So set it up just like this, 3 times the quantity of this, and then all I need to do is distribute. Distribute here by multiplying. 3 times 5 is 15/4 over n. 3 times 1.8 is 5.4. I look at my answer choices, and I know it can't be that one because I've got an n and then some other number. It can't be B either. So I know that 15/4 is the same as 3.75 plus 5.4. My correct answer is D. Which expression makes this equation true for all values of x? You can kind of do this as a guess and check, but just think, well, this is 16x minus 4. 4 times what number in this missing spot would give me 16x minus 4? Well, if I multiply 4 by 4, I get 16. And if I multiply 4 by negative 4, I get negative 16. Don't forget that x. So the correct answer then is 4x minus 4. Answer choice A. Question number 7. Oh, you can't read it. Here we go. Okay, it says, Mike took a taxi from his home to the airport. The taxi driver charged an initial fee of $6 plus $3 a mile. So the first thing I want to do is write a math statement where m equals the miles, and then I'm going to combine like terms. So the cost, y, is going to be equal to the initial fee of $6 plus he charged $3 per mile. The next part tells me, well, paid $24. 6 plus 3m. Now I just combine like terms, and I get all my terms on one side, getting m by itself. Subtract 6 from both sides, and I'm left with 18 equals 3m. Divide both sides by 3, and you're left with a quantity of 6 miles. And answer choice is B. Miss Gartland bought X number of shirts for new members of her chorus. The cost for X number of shirts, including the $3.99 shipping, and you have to kind of know the shipping is just a fixed price, it's not per shirt, was $77.49. Each shirt cost $12.25. There was no tax on this purchase, so that means you can just completely disregard that statement altogether. It doesn't help you or hurt you. Which equation could be used? So you don't have to solve anything here, but you have to say, well, each shirt cost $12.25, so this is the cost of the shirt. This is the number of shirts, and the $3.99 is the shipping. That whole thing equals $7.49. So I look at my choices, and the only one that represents the cost of the shirt plus the shipping is the total cost, is answer choice D. Addison wants to ride her bicycle more than 80 miles. So I'm immediately thinking I've got some kind of inequality here, but it's going to be more than 80 miles. She has already ridden 18. So this is what she starts with, and she has to figure out how many more she has to ride every day in order to be greater than, and it doesn't say equal to, just greater than 80. So it says that I have 6 days, so 6 times the average number of miles she rides. Therefore, 18 ridden, 6 for every day she's going to ride m number of miles. It has to be greater than 80. The correct answer choice is C. Number 10. Lance bought N notebooks. So N for notebooks. And the cost is 75 cents each. And P pens, the cost is 55 cents each. A tax of 6.25 has to be added on to the total price. So you have to look at each one of these equations, and this one is kind of tricky. But you have to say, like, well, here are the notebooks, here are the pens. So if I add that up, that's the total price. Then I take the 0.0625, which is the tax, and I basically have to add it on to the price of the pens, and the notebooks. So the correct answer choice is B. It's the cost of the pens and the notebooks, plus the tax that you have to pay for them. This one was tricky, and we didn't do too many of these in class, but if you kind of worked through it or even did guess and check, you could get this one right. And first of all is just understanding the question. They did put together, you didn't have to draw this, it's drawn for you, but you have to know that the perimeter, if I add this side plus this side plus this side plus this side, the total is 200. And I know these two sides are the same, these two sides are the same, except I have this tricky little gate right here. And I don't know what that gate is. It's X, but I'm going to have to find out what the X is. So one way of doing this is to just say 60 plus X and 60 plus X plus the 60 for the two sides is equal to 200. Then I can combine all my like terms. I get 180 plus 2X equals 200. Subtract 180 from both sides, and I get 2x equals 20, divide by 2, x is equal to 10, and so I know that the size of my gate right here is 10 feet. Again, you could have done guess and check. That takes a little while, but otherwise you can use an equation to help solve your problem. Question number 12. The measure of one side of a square is s plus 3. So remember, a square, all the sides are the same. So I know that if one side is s plus 3, all sides are s plus 3. So it just says which pair of expressions could represent the perimeter. So remember, the perimeter is adding each one of these things up. So look at this, 2s, no, makes no sense. 2 times s plus 3, nope, there are 4 sides. 4s plus 3 makes no sense either because I have 4 sides. By process of elimination, you can get down to d, which just says 4 times the number of sides, or 1 side plus 1 side plus 1 side plus 1 side, and the correct answer is D. Question number 13. We're almost there, kids. Just hang on. A couple more questions. An item with an original price of P dollars is on sale at a 25% discount. Which expression is not? And it's really important when you have a not, because that means all of them are correct except one. Your job is to find the one that is not the same. So let's look at the first one. So really it's just the price P dollars on sale. So it's 1P minus 0.25. So that would be equivalent to 75%. That's fine. 1 minus 25P, and look, all they did here was they just brought the P to the outside. So this one is fine. 0.75P is exactly right. So by default, it's the last one. This is not the same as this statement here. The correct answer choice is D. Number 14. Ms. Hernandez has $100 to spend on parking and admission to the zoo. The parking will cost $7, and the admission cost $15.50 per person. So this is the fixed cost, $7, and this is the variable cost, depending on how many people she takes. She has $100, so she can spend $100, but she can't spend more than $100. So I set up my statement as the fixed cost plus the cost per person, $5.50 per person, has to be less than or equal to 100, which is all she has to spend. So now I just combine like terms. I want to get the P by itself. I subtract 7 from both sides, and I'm left with 15.5P is less than or equal to 93. Divide both sides by 5.5. Use your calculator, and you get P is less than or equal to 6. In other words, she can take 6 people, including herself, or less, of course. Number 15. Mr. Gonzalez has only $42.50 to spend at a clothing store. He wants to buy a shirt, and a shirt just means one shirt that costs $29. So that's not a variable. This is the fixed cost, $29 for the shirt. Then he wants to buy some bracelets, because he wants some bracelets to go with his shirt. Anyway, the bracelets are $4.50 per bracelet. So I set it up, the fixed price of the shirt, the cost of the bracelet, and then X represents the number of bracelets. He only has $42.50, so once again, it has to be less than or equal to $42.50. I want to get the X by itself, so I subtract 29 from both sides. I divide 4.5 on both sides, and I get, once I've finished this, if I divide $13.50 by 4.5, the equation is he can buy less than or equal to 3, or the answer is 3 bracelets. He can buy 3 or less bracelets on his budget. And the last question, we made it. Don't lose focus here. It's really the same thing. Once again, Harper has $15 to spend at the grocery store. She's going to buy bags of fruit that cost $4.75 and 1 box of crackers. So again, there's no variable for the crackers. So the crackers is $3.50 because she's buying 1, plus 4.75 times the number of bags of fruit. It has to be less than or equal to the $15 that she has. So crackers, fruit, bags of fruit, less than or equal to 15. I do a lot of math legwork here, and I come down to dividing 1150 by 475. X has to be less than or equal to 2.41. And we haven't talked too much about rounding, but in this case, you have to round down because you can't buy a third or a fourth of a bag of fruit. So she can only buy 2 bags of fruit, and she'll have a little left over. So be sure you complete your sheet today. And please ask me any questions or send me an email if you have any questions. Have a good rest of your break. See you on Monday.